Technically, any vessel that's food grade and can be sealed with an airlock qualifies as a fermenter. So yeah, technically, you can use a carboy for fermentation. But I wouldn't. For it to be a reasonable functional fermenter, it really needs to have a wide mouth. So don't use your carboy for fermentation, but go ahead and keep it around for secondary and bulk aging because it's really good at that. Fermentation can be messy. Sometimes you might get a batch that just kind of bubbles along slowly for a while and then it's done. But most of the time, especially when working with certain ingredients, certain yeast, or any other of a million variables, these batches can bubble and foam. They can fill the headspace up with krausen, fermenting aggressively, tossing and sloshing all that gunk inside everywhere. And with a narrow neck carboy, even when you're working with a vessel of the same overall volume, there's less headspace for that gunk to fit into. The narrow neck can actually encourage pressure to build up and force all that gunk up and out of the airlock. And you really don't want that stuff all over your walls and ceiling. That gunk will end up caked all over the inside of the vessel when you're done, and under even the best circumstances, it's still gonna be really hard to clean. But with a wide mouth vessel like a cheap plastic bucket or the Brew Demon or even a corny keg, you can get your arm all the way down inside to really scrub it clean. Now, they do make special cleaning brushes specifically for carboys, and I have one of those. And PBW does a pretty good job most of the time, but that's all kind of unwieldy and not really the easiest solution. But these things that make carboys so terrible for primary fermentation are the same things that make them so good for secondary and bulk aging. After fermentation is done and the liquid's just sitting still, you don't really have to worry so much about the mess or the gunk. After it's sat 6 months or even a year in a carboy, you'll still just have wine or mead. I mean, maybe some sediments at the bottom, but nothing that's gonna get caked on and be hard to clean. And when you're aging, you wanna minimize contact with the air as much as you can. Wine and mead is much less susceptible to oxidation compared to something like beer, but you still want to be as careful as possible. And so the narrow neck of the carboy creates a much smaller surface area at the top of the liquid, so there's a lot less contact with the air and a lot less opportunity for oxygen to get in. Plus, carboys are typically made from glass, which is non-porous, meaning oxygen can't penetrate the sides and get into the liquid. This isn't necessarily an issue for short periods, but if you're aging for many months, you're gonna want to use glass or stainless steel. Plastic is good for many things, but it can cause issues during long-term aging. Now I know you want a carboy, they are very appealing. It looks real nice to have a bunch of carboys with all kind of brews lining your shelf. Especially these days, all the brew tubers seem to have that kind of setup. It's a very aesthetic look to have all that going on behind you in the shot while you're filming. But are you doing this for looks, or are you trying to make something good? It's not really anything new though. I remember when I was new to the hobby, I used to hang out on the old homebrew talk forums, and I love seeing the pictures some of the guys posted of, their beers and whatnot fermenting away in carboys. It just looks so cool. Back then though, carboys were expensive. There was no way I was going to be able to afford one on a college kid's wages. I guess even if I could though, I wasn't going to find one. Amazon wasn't really a thing back then, and my local homebrew store didn't really carry them. But that's alright, I know now that I was better off. They've gotten real cheap now, which does make them a lot more appealing. Way cheaper than a lot of the other fermenters I have. And so I do have a bunch of them, more than probably any other vessel. But I never use them for primary fermentation. And so that's what I suggest. Go ahead and get you a carboy, or even a few of them, and use them for aging your meads and wines. But also, get a proper fermenter for actual fermentation. I have a video for you on the most basic brewing equipment setup, including a cheap plastic bucket, which is what I recommend for any new brewer. But if you're looking for something a little nicer, a little more functional, a little more robust, I also put out a video recently on the Brew Demon, which is my go-to fermenter. But other than that, I'll see you in the next one.